Adventure in Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures Pipeman W4CY Radio, and we're here at Hell's Heroes, and I'm here with
Giles Lavery of Warlord.
And Mark Zonder of Warlord.
Nice. So I got to tell you a story just to start off to begin with. I grew up in Jersey, and my dad came home one day in 1980 and said, in 3 days, we're moving to California. And then I found this cool record store in the valley off of Topanga and met this dude that was a record store clerk in there. And he used to show me albums that I should listen to and bands that I should listen to. And he mentioned this band, Warlord. And it was before Metal Massacre 2 came out.
Would that happen to be Brian Slagel at Oz Records?
That's who it was. That's who it was. You know, it's funny. A few years ago, I saw him, and I'm like, man, what a brilliant way to market yourself. He goes, man, I was just a record store clerk. But I think about it, like, me and all my friends, we used to go there all the time, and, like, every band I knew was because of Brian Slagel.
That's about right. Yep.
So here we are, 2026. What, like, when this all first happened, when you first started this, did you ever think that in 2026 you would be playing a festival in Houston, Texas?
I actually thought it should have been a bigger festival.
There you go.
I mean, I know that sounds funny, but back then it's a different kind of deal than what's happening now. We were a band, we were a gang, we were a team, and we were going to go and go and go, and we believed in it, and we loved it, and we played all day long, and all we did was practice and write and all that kind of stuff. And we had, the difference between now and then, back then there was like the slightest little bit of hope for bands. Because you saw bands getting signed. You saw Motley Crue. You saw this band, that band, whatever. We were in L.A. So you see these bands. And all of a sudden, the whole thing exploded. And so there was hope. So everybody was like totally into it. We knew we had the songs. And I'm very grateful where we are right now, but we had big hopes. This wasn't just like a casual fancy back then. We had the dreams just like everybody else, but no, very happy to be here in one piece, and playing, the Warlord music.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, like back then, you're right. There was hope, but there was also that cultish underground thing going on, which you guys were a big part of.
Well, actually, the way the underground came about back then is because we weren't on the mainstream.
Right.
We were forced in it, Yeah. We could have got a deal with Atlantic Records or Geffen. We would have left the underground in about 2 seconds. We would have packed our bags just like you did.
As I'm sure anybody would.
Exactly.
But it was also hard because LA started getting split up. And then you had, like Crue, I saw them before they became glam. They were actually kind of cool when that was the first club show I ever went to, was Crue at the Roxy before they had an album, and they tried to burn the place down to bring Satan in. I'm like, I'm never going to a real concert ever again. So how about you? How do you feel about being in Warlord now?
Well, it's been a while now. I mean, my first work with Warlord was back in 2013. I sang a track on the Holy Empire record and the subsequent tour for that. I love the music. I've always been a fan. I've always loved the songs. I love to sing the songs, and I love playing the songs with Mark and the rest of the band. So there's really no downside to any of it. So how do I feel? I feel great, and I'm looking forward to the show. Yeah,
and you know what? That's what I love to hear most. If you're not having fun in the music industry, it's the wrong industry.
Well, there's too many parts of it that aren't fun.
Right, exactly.
There's got to be an up somewhere.
Right.
And if you're going on stage and you're still not finding that up, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. Because
no doubt.
That really is the salvation. That's that moment where you can, all the other bad stuff, it's all worth it for this, 60 minutes or 90 minutes, depending on what you're doing, is on stage.
And, I find, too, that back then, even back in 2013, that bands were, like, experimenting, making something new. And I find a lot of the new bands now, like, they plug in this formula. And metal was never a formula.
Well, that's why I always kind of, and I understand it, but I do find it kind of interesting and funny where, and it happens like every 10, 15, 20 years where like all of a sudden bands are coming out that are basically just copying the 80s new wave of British heavy metal. And I always think, yeah, they got this and they got that, but it always seems like they're missing two things. It's the songs and the virtuoso style players that came out of that era. Because there were guys that came out of that era that are just monster musicians, you know, whether it's heavy metal or whatever, it didn't matter. They're just monster musicians. I don't see that. I just see kind of that thing of like just trying to reinvent that 80s new wave heavy metal kind of thing and trying to be, whether it's the next Def Leppard or the next Maiden or whatever the case may be.
Which is, what's funny about that to me is the bands that those were their influences, they didn't try to play like them, you know? Like, you take a band like Slayer. That was obviously their influences because that was the only influences back then. And maybe they started a little that way and playing the covers, but then you developed your own sound and your own... And you take all the bands from that time and they all sounded different, even within the same genre.
Well, I got a little bit of a theory for that.
Let's hear it.
I think that people's influences are getting narrow, for them, generally speaking, are getting narrower and narrower. You take Pantera, their influences were Van Halen, Kiss, ZZ Top, Metallica, the heavy stuff, Southern rock, all kinds of stuff. That's what made Pantera. But then you had a whole cluster of bands that were just influenced by Pantera.
Right.
So if the influences started this wide, as we're going along, they're getting narrower and narrower. And you meet people like, what's your influence? Dream Theater. Whereas if you ask someone 20, 30 years ago, what's your influence? He'd be like, well, Jethro Tull and, Stray and a number of different things that perhaps would not be so identifiable as heavy metal these days. So, I mean, me, myself, I love all kinds of different music. I love Foreigner, Journey, and Survivor as much as I love Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Savatage and stuff like that. So my influences are many.
I think that is the difference between us old school people because we had so many things. Like, I started listening to music because my brother, who was 11 years older, I was stealing his record albums, of bands like the Rascals and the Grassroots
Earth, Wind and Fire,
Creed, Earth, Wind and Fire,
Chicago.
And it's like nowadays, I can only listen to this, and it's, all that stuff was all you listened to. Like, I loved listening to Possessed as much as Warlord, as much as Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Well, for me, it's a little bit like eating food. You don't want to, if you eat the same meal every day, it gets kind of boring.
No, that's a good analogy right there. So if you guys, each one of you, if you were to tell one story, good, bad, crazy, that really sticks in your mind out of your whole career in music, what would it be?
Oh, boy, you put me on the spot.
I know, right?
I do have a few. I'm just got to kind of censor them as I'm running through. Mark, start with Mark.
Well, we'll keep it in the Warlord vein. So not everybody, but most people know the whole story and how, for 40 years, ups and downs and comings and goings and Bill getting sick and ill. One of my best stories is, I have all the great memories of Bill and I by ourselves for 8 months jamming in a stone garage, louder than all get out and playing everything really fast and just him and I jamming, which developed the Warlord sound.
Right.
But the one that always comes to mind is we're sitting there at Gagarin in Greece. And the opening band's playing. Me and Bill are warming up backstage, and all you hear is Warlord, 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 over the top. And we both looked at each other, and it was a two thing. It was one whoa, this is what Iron Maiden feels like every night. It's like, damn, this is easy to play. And then the other one was that kind of cocked eye with the weird smile going, what the fuck took so long? Because it was 35, 40 years in, and why did it take so long? So, we know why it took so long, but it was a great moment between the two of us.
I love it. And I love that you stuck it out because it has been a kind of a turbulent ride all along the way. And the fact that you're here playing this festival this year, to me, is a testament of your dedication to music.
It also has a lot to do, this comes about because you have guys that are totally into it.
Yeah.
The band is great. The band has never sounded better. and it's the guy. It's a no hassle band. The guys are like it's great. It's easy and it's fun.
That's the way it should be. Did you figure out which one you're going to pick?
I mean, like Mark said, keeping it in the Warlord thing, I can quite, a lot of people say, this band changed my life, but that album changed my life, but I can actually say 100% Warlord changed my life.
Nice.
I bought the record. I knew who Mark Zonder was when I was 9 years old. I bought the records. Not many people get to join the band that they grew up loving.
Right.
And I've been fortunate to work with a couple of bands that I grew up loving. And Warlord, I was asked to join to do the tour, the Holy Empire tour, which actually led to me moving to Germany, which led to my whole life changing and me getting involved with artist management and singing for other bands and doing running a record label and doing all the other stuff I'm interested in and involved in. All started because of Warlord.
Nice.
So how's that?
That is
I can
badass.
say Warlord changed my life.
That is badass.
And this wasn't just me. This is like some people say that because they had a bad month and they kind of felt kind of depressed and that album really got me through. I can actually say Warlord changed my life. Turned the whole thing upside down.
Literally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why do you think, in your mind, they picked you to sing?
I was really, really cheap. No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, Bill heard my other band, Dragon's Claw, which was a band I had in Australia, and I guess he liked what I did and he liked my voice, and he wrote me.
Well,
tell
him the real story.
You tell me which one?
We were set up to do the tour, and there was someone else singing. And me and Bill decided that as this other person was singing, as it got closer to the date, hey, every week send us a song, make sure that you got it, and everything's cool. Well, it was getting very evident that this wasn't going to happen. And Bill knew Giles, and was it like 3 weeks ahead?
Yeah, that's right.
3 weeks before the tour, and if Giles didn't come into play, there would have been no tour, and God only knows where the whole thing could have wound up. But he basically walked in, 3 weeks notice. Good thing that he liked the music and knew the music.
Yeah.
But
right?
I mean, that's crazy. That's how it, and then the whole thing started rolling from there.
Yeah.
So it was really a testament to him stepping in, because I'm not sure if I would do something like that. That's a lot.
Well, that's good kudos to you then, huh?
Yeah, I mean, and Bill reached out to me, as I said. He'd heard my voice on the Dragon's Claw stuff, and all of a sudden it kind of escalated kind of quickly. And, going to Greece, going to Germany, we did the tour for the Holy Empire, and again, it changed my life, because then I subsequently moved to Germany and started my whole life there. So
Nice. Well, in a little while, we're going to hear your voice here at Hell's Heroes.
Yep. And the rest of the guys, too.
Exactly. And
If they make it.
Yeah.
do you have any other final words you want to give the listeners before we go?
Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting Warlord. And we hope to see you on this tour, because we got 21 shows in the United States. Tonight's the first night of the tour, and it's the very first American show that Warlord has ever played in its career.
That is fucking wild.
You know what? The first one was Wacken in Germany in 2002, but Mark will tell you about that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's it's great. We're really looking forward to it, and always wanted to play America. I know we're going to meet a lot of the Warlord fans that have been very, very dedicated to the band that are here in the States, so really looking forward to it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Right on. Thank you very much. This is Giles Lavery from Warlord, and you're listening to Pipeman on W4CY.com.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.